My name is Evelyn Carter, 42 years old, and until this morning I was the marketing director of a Manhattan tech giant. For 2 decades, my life had been defined by deadlines, campaigns, and the glow of skyscraper windows at midnight. Now I was sitting in my corner office on the 28th floor, staring at the resignation letter glowing on my laptop screen, my signature already at the bottom. Before I go further, if you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel. These stories are not just about betrayal and career twists. They're about the choices that cut us open and force us to grow. The Hudson River stretched out beyond the glass wall, ferries cutting through the current like silent arrows. Normally, that view filled me with pride, a reminder of how far I'd climbed from a cramped apartment in Queens. But today, it mocked me. 20 years of ladder climbing felt suddenly small after the doctor's voice had cracked down the line an hour ago. Stage 4. We're talking months, not years. I pressed my palms against the desk, the polished wood cool under my skin. The office door creaked, and Rachel, my longtime assistant, poked her head in. "There's another crisis with the Samsung campaign," she said softly. "Do you want me to hold the calls? Any other day, I would have snapped into battle mode charts, slogans, quick fixes, but the word months kept echoing in my ears, louder than any client demand. I shook my head. "No. Cancel the meeting. And Rachel," my voice cracked despite me, "send flowers to Dr. Levine's office. Tell him, thank you for being honest." Her eyes widened. She knew something had shifted. When she left, I swiveled in my chair, letting the city blur into streaks of light. How many birthdays had I missed? How many dinners with Noah did I trade for late-night strategy decks? My throat tightened. The phone buzzed. LinkedIn notifications, recruiter messages, colleagues checking if the rumors about me burning out were true. I closed them all. Burnout wasn't my story. Love was. I opened my notes app and typed a single line, almost like a mantra. The most expensive negotiation of my life, time with Mom. I didn't know it then, but that line would become my shield in the weeks ahead, the words that would silence rooms full of doubters. When the elevator doors finally closed behind me that evening, I didn't look back at the office I'd sacrificed so much for. Ahead of me was Brooklyn, my mother's small brick house, and the beginning of a new kind of fight, one I couldn't afford to lose. The subway rattled me back into Brooklyn that night, the weight of the resignation letter still heavy in my bag. By the time I stepped into my mother's brick house, the city's neon had given way to the soft hum of her oxygen machine. The living room smelled faintly of lavender detergent and antiseptic wipes. Mom lay in her recliner, a clear tube running from the oxygen tank to her nose. Her once sharp blue eyes fluttered open, and for a moment she looked almost like herself again. "You're home early," she whispered, voice thin but teasing. "I quit, Mom," I admitted, crouching down beside her chair. My fingers brushed her blanket, worn thin from years of washing. "It's just you and me now." Her hand, fragile and bird-like, rested on mine. "I never wanted you to give up your life for me." "I didn't give up," I said quickly, blinking hard. "I traded up. Boardrooms can wait." "You can't." The front door opened, heels clicking against the wooden floor. Monica, my younger sister, breezed in. Her designer trench coat still smelled faintly of perfume. She bent down, snapped a quick selfie beside Mom, angled to catch her Hermes bag in the frame. "Family first," she chirped, already typing the caption into her phone. Then, glancing at me, "Evelyn, you left the office? Just like that?" I adjusted Mom's IV line, checking the drip rate. "The doctor said months, not years. What else was I supposed to do?" Monica's smile tightened. "Some people thrive under pressure. Others, well, they crack. Not everyone is built for the long haul." The words stung sharper than I wanted to admit. My hands trembled slightly as I secured the tubing. I'd mastered campaign budgets of $50 million, but this, keeping a fragile flow of liquid steady, felt more terrifying than any pitch. Mom squeezed my hand. "Don't listen to her," she murmured. "You're doing exactly what matters." But Monica was already glancing at her watch. "I have a dinner with the VP. I'll swing by next week, maybe." She kissed Mom's cheek lightly and was gone before the oxygen machine finished its next sigh. The silence left behind was deafening. I stroked Mom's hair, soft and thin as spun glass, and whispered, "We'll get through this, you and me." Outside, a car horn blared on Flatbush Avenue, a reminder that the world was moving forward at full speed. Inside, I was learning how to slow down, one drip at a time. The night after Monica's whirlwind visit, the house settled into its usual rhythm, the steady hiss of the oxygen machine, the faint drip of the IV, and Mom's shallow breaths. I sat at the kitchen table with a half-finished cup of tea, scrolling through my phone, every notification a reminder of the world I'd stepped away from. LinkedIn pings lit up the screen. "Are you okay? Burnout, huh? Take some time, you'll bounce back." Their words weren't comfort. They were curiosity dressed in sympathy. I closed the app, but the whispers clung like smoke. Mom's voice drifted from the living room. "Evelyn, you should sleep." "In a minute, Mom," I called back, though I knew sleep wouldn't come. I opened the Notes app instead and tapped out a sentence that felt truer than any resume line. "The most expensive negotiation of my life, time with Mom." Reading it aloud under my breath steadied me, like a private vow. Still, the fear gnawed. What would people see now when they looked at me? A woman who had managed million-dollar campaigns but couldn't handle the heat. Or worse, a woman who simply disappeared? The phone buzzed again. This time it was a group text from old colleagues, a dinner invite in Midtown. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. The thought of clinking glasses and dodging questions about my sabbatical made my stomach twist. I deleted the invite, then caught sight of my reflection in the darkened window hair pulled back, shadows under my eyes, no trace of the confident director who once ruled boardrooms. For a heartbeat, Monica's words replayed, "Not everyone is built for the long haul." My chest tightened. I pressed a palm flat against the cool kitchen counter and whispered, "I am built for it, just not the way she thinks." When I checked on Mom again, she was asleep, her hand resting lightly over the blanket as if reaching for something. I adjusted the IV bag and kissed her forehead. The world outside was loud, full of opinions, but here, in this quiet house, I was learning that strength didn't always look like applause. Sometimes, it was just keeping the drip steady through the night. The next evening, after Mom had finally drifted into a light sleep, I heard the familiar rattle of keys at the front door. Noah stepped inside, shoulders hunched beneath his jacket, the chill of early spring clinging to him. He carried a bag of takeout, the smell of sesame chicken filling the narrow hallway. "You didn't have to," I said softly, meeting him in the kitchen. "I wanted to," he replied, setting the bag down. His voice carried a heaviness that didn't match the smile he tried to offer. "Long day at the office?" I poured him tea while he unpacked cartons onto chipped plates. Silence stretched between us, filled only by the low hiss of Mom's oxygen machine in the living room. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Mom, there's something you should know." I froze, chopsticks halfway to a plate. "What is it?" He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting toward the hallway as if afraid Grandma might overhear. "Aunt Monica, she's been talking about you at Summit, loudly, to people who don't even know you." My stomach tightened. "Talking how?" Noah hesitated, then pulled his phone from his pocket. "I shouldn't show you this, but I couldn't just let it slide." He tapped, then played a short recording. Monica's voice spilled out, sharp and careless. "Evelyn couldn't handle the pressure. She quit because she cracked. People like her drag companies down. That's why I'll never let Summit carry dead weight." The words cut deeper than I expected. I pressed a hand to the counter, steadying myself. "Why would she—" My voice trailed. "She wants to look strong in front of the execs," Noah said quietly. "And Daniel Wu's coming to the wedding. She doesn't know I work in his department. She thinks bad-mouthing you makes her look loyal." I met my son's steady gaze. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man, choosing courage over silence. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Nothing yet," he said firmly. "Just be ready. I don't want them defining you before he even meets you." The chopsticks slipped from my fingers and clattered against the plate. I bent to pick them up, forcing my voice to stay calm. I won't let her rewrite my story. Not this time. Outside, a siren wailed down Flatbush Avenue, fading into the distance. Inside, I realized the real storm was brewing closer to home. The following morning, while Brooklyn was still wrapped in mist across the river in Jersey City, Monica Carter swept through the glass doors of Summit Dynamics. Her heels clicked like a metronome against the marble floor, each step deliberate, rehearsed. She had a presentation folder tucked under one arm, and behind her polished smile lingered the shadow of desperation. On the 21st floor, the HR bullpen buzzed with chatter about layoffs and restructuring. Monica thrived in that atmosphere. Fear gave her leverage. She gathered her team in the small conference room, the city skyline glittering behind her. "Listen up," she began, spreading glossy charts across the table. "Corporate wants leaner teams. We're talking efficiency, performance, no dead weight. And I've been chosen to lead the initiative." A young recruiter raised a cautious hand. "So, does this mean terminations?" Monica's smile sharpened. "It means we reward resilience and weed out fragility. Summit doesn't have space for people who crack under pressure." Her tone made the word fragility sound like a disease. One of the coordinators shifted uncomfortably. "But what about family leave? Medical emergencies? Aren't those protected?" Monica cut her off smoothly. "Protected, yes. Excused, not forever. At the end of the day, commitment speaks louder than excuses. And let me be clear, leadership notices who's built for the long haul." She let the words hang, eyes sweeping the room like a queen surveying her court. No one dared challenge her further. When the meeting ended, Monica lingered with two colleagues she considered her allies. She leaned closer, voice dropping into a conspiratorial tone. "You'll see plenty of examples at my nephew's wedding next week. My sister Evelyn, brilliant once, but she walked away the moment things got tough. Couldn't handle the pressure." One of the men frowned. "Didn't she leave to care for your mother?" Monica waved the question away, manicured nails flashing. "That's the story she tells. But the truth? She burned out. She's a cautionary tale. Summit doesn't need people like that dragging us backward." What Monica didn't notice was Noah slipping past the open doorway at that exact moment, a stack of files in his arms. He kept his eyes down, face unreadable, but his phone in his pocket was already recording. By noon, Monica was striding into the executive wing, rehearsing her pitch for Daniel Wu. She'd drop Evelyn's name subtly, positioning herself as the loyal Carter sister, the one who stayed strong when others collapsed. Every detail, her tailored dress, her confident laugh, even the carefully timed compliments was part of her staging. She didn't see how strained her own reflection looked in the mirrored elevator wall. The truth was, her credit cards were maxed, her mortgage behind, and she needed this restructuring to secure her standing. To her, Evelyn wasn't just a sister anymore. She was a rival whose absence had to be spun as weakness, not sacrifice. Back in Brooklyn, I was tightening Mom's blanket, unaware that Monica was weaving a narrative powerful enough to echo all the way into my son's workplace and straight into the heart of my future. The mansion on Long Island glowed like a lantern against the dusk. Strings of lights draped across manicured gardens, and jazz drifted over the clink of champagne glasses. It should have felt like celebration, but as I stepped into the cocktail hour, I felt my chest tighten. I adjusted the pearl necklace Mom had lent me, her whispered encouragement still ringing in my ears from earlier that day. "Don't let Monica get to you." I didn't have to wait long. Monica appeared at my elbow, her smile fixed and sharp. "There you are, Evelyn. Come meet some of Noah's colleagues from Summit. They're dying to meet the family." I knew better nobody at a wedding cocktail hour was dying to meet the bridegroom's aunt, but I let her steer me toward a circle of young professionals, all holding drinks, name badges from Summit Dynamics still clipped to their suit pockets and purses. Their eyes brightened with the eagerness of people networking even on their weekend. "Everyone, this is my sister," Monica announced sweetly. Her hand clamped on my shoulder like ownership. "Evelyn used to be in marketing, but she's between opportunities now." A woman with sleek hair leaned forward. "Oh, what company were you with?" Before I could answer, Monica jumped in. "She left suddenly. It was A lot for her. Corporate life isn't for everyone. She laughed lightly, the sound sharp as broken glass. The group shifted, unsure whether to laugh along. I caught one young man's raised brow as if silently asking, "Is she really saying this here?" My throat went dry. For a heartbeat, I considered walking away. But then I saw Noah across the lawn, his jaw clenched as he watched his aunt spin her story. His eyes met mine, steady, almost pleading. "Don't let her write this for you." I straightened my back. "Actually," I said, my voice calm but clear, "I spent 20 years leading campaigns in Manhattan. I resigned to care for my mother. Some negotiations aren't about budgets or metrics, they're about time. And right now, I'm negotiating for the most important months of her life." The air shifted. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Someone coughed softly, embarrassed for Monica. Her smile faltered, then snapped back into place. "Of course," she said too quickly. "Family comes first, but, well, not everyone can afford to take such a long break. Most of us have to keep pushing forward." I felt the sting, but before I could reply, movement caught my eye. At the far edge of the circle, Daniel Wu stood, drink in hand, listening without pretending not to. His gaze was unreadable, but unmistakably fixed on us. Monica, too caught up in her performance, hadn't noticed him yet. She raised her voice, drawing in a few more guests, weaving her narrative tighter. The crowd grew, curious to witness whatever drama was unfolding. And I realized this was no casual introduction. Monica was building her stage, and I was supposed to play the role of the cautionary tale. But I wasn't planning to follow her script. The circle had grown larger, champagne glasses catching the golden light as more guests drifted in, curious. Monica's voice rang louder, honeyed and cutting at once. "Some people," she said, tilting her glass toward me, "just aren't built for the long haul. Stress gets to them. They step away and the rest of us are left carrying the weight. It's unfortunate, really." The group tittered uneasily. My skin prickled. I could feel Noah's eyes on me from across the lawn, his shoulders rigid, and just behind the ring of onlookers, Daniel Wu lingered, listening, his expression carefully neutral. For a moment, my breath caught. The old instinct to retreat, to keep the peace, clawed at me. But then I remembered the words I had written in my notes app on that sleepless night. The most expensive negotiation of my life, time with Mom. I let out a slow breath, straightened my shoulders, and stepped forward. "Monica," I said, my voice steady though my heart hammered, "thank you for your concern. But let me clarify something because I think you've misunderstood." The chatter quieted. Even the band inside seemed to soften. "I didn't quit because I couldn't handle the pressure. For 20 years, I thrived in it. I built campaigns that carried entire companies. I negotiated budgets larger than some startups' valuations. But now—" I paused, scanning the circle of expectant faces. "Now I'm in the most expensive negotiation of my life. Not for a promotion, not for a title, for time. With my mother." Silence. Heads tilted. I could feel the weight of every gaze pressing in. "You see," I continued, the words flowing easier now, "money, prestige, corner offices, they're renewable. Time with the people you love isn't. When the oncologist tells you months, not years, the calculus changes. And I chose to invest my energy where it mattered most." A young woman with a badge clipped to her clutch swallowed hard, lowering her glass. A man in his 20s shifted uncomfortably, as if realizing the story he'd been fed didn't line up. Monica laughed too brightly. "Well, sure, caregiving is noble, but stepping out like that, most people can't afford." "Exactly," I cut in, still calm but sharper now. "Not everyone can afford to. That's why it matters that some of us show it's possible. That walking away doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're strong enough to define success on your own terms." A ripple moved through the crowd, the kind that comes when people recognize truth spoken plainly. Noah exhaled, almost visibly relieved. His fiancée Emily, standing beside him, squeezed his hand with quiet pride. And Daniel Wu, still at the edge of the circle, finally let the corner of his mouth lift in something that looked almost like approval. 40 seconds. That was all it took. 40 seconds to wrest the narrative from Monica's grip and lay down my own. Monica's smile cracked just slightly, but she recovered, tucking hair behind her ear, her laugh brittle now. "Well," she said, voice tight, "I suppose that's one way to spin it." But the crowd wasn't looking at her anymore. They were still watching me, waiting for what I would say next. And for the first time in months, I realized I didn't feel invisible at all. The murmurs of the crowd still lingered in the air when the circle finally began to scatter, guests retreating toward the bar or the garden paths. Monica's cheeks flushed a shade too bright beneath her carefully applied makeup, but she forced her trademark smile as if nothing had cracked. That was when Daniel Wu stepped forward, not to me, not yet, but to her. His approach was quiet, deliberate, the kind that draws attention without raising his voice. "Ms. Carter," he said smoothly. Monica blinked, clearly startled. "Mr. Wu, I didn't realize you'd arrived. What a pleasure." He cut her pleasantries short with a polite but cool nod. "A word, privately." The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Monica's posture stiffened. She tried to laugh, waving toward a cluster of guests. "Of course, though this isn't really the setting for—" "Now," Daniel said evenly. His tone left no room for negotiation. She followed him reluctantly to a quiet corner near the French doors leading into the ballroom. From where I stood, I couldn't hear every word, but Noah had angled himself close enough to catch pieces of it, his phone discreetly lowered at his side. Daniel's voice carried just enough to slice through the hum of conversation. "You supervise compliance with Summit's HR handbook, correct?" "Yes, absolutely," Monica rushed to say. "I take it very seriously." "Then I'm curious," he said, tilting his glass but not drinking, "why I've just listened to you publicly disparage a family member at a company-adjacent event using language that directly undermines our stated values. Words about fragility, about cutting out dead weight." Monica's smile faltered. "It was casual, not professional. Just family talk, Mr. Wu. Everyone understands that." "No," Daniel replied, his tone clipped but controlled. "Everyone doesn't. When an HR director publicly frames caregiving as weakness, it sets precedent, and precedent becomes culture." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. I didn't mean it like that." "Intentions are irrelevant," Daniel said, his gaze level. "Impact is what matters. Monday, 8 a.m., my office. We'll discuss whether your role is aligned with Summit's future." Monica's mask cracked. "You can't mean—" "I advise you not to speak further tonight," he interrupted, his voice low but firm. "Not about your sister, not about the company. Enjoy the reception quietly. That will be your best option." He left her standing there, clutching her champagne glass as though it might shatter in her grip. From across the patio, I caught Daniel's eyes for the briefest moment. There was no flourish, no savior's smile, just the steady acknowledgement of someone who had seen through the performance and decided the play was over. And for the first time, I realized Monica wasn't just bruising my reputation, she was sawing at the branch she herself was sitting on. The sun had slipped beneath the horizon, and lanterns strung along the trees glowed warm against the deepening sky. The cocktail hour was winding down when the wedding coordinator appeared with a microphone, preparing to usher guests toward the ballroom. Before she could announce the transition, Daniel Wu stepped forward, composed as ever. "If I may," he said, his voice carrying easily over the chatter. The coordinator handed him the mic without hesitation. The crowd shifted, curiosity flickering across faces. Monica, standing stiffly by the French doors, paled. She knew what had just passed between them in private. Daniel raised his glass. "Good evening, everyone. I want to thank our gracious hosts and celebrate Noah and Emily, who remind us what love looks like when it's rooted in respect and trust." A round of applause broke out, glasses lifted high. But Daniel didn't stop there. He glanced across the crowd, his eyes settling briefly on me before scanning the circle. "Weddings are about family. And sometimes family reminds us of the values we bring into our work, our communities, our lives. Tonight I'd like to acknowledge someone who embodies those values more than anyone I've ever met." I felt my breath catch. He couldn't mean Evelyn Carter. He said my name slowly, deliberately, and suddenly 200 guests were looking my way. Heat rose to my cheeks. I wanted to shrink back, but Noah and Emily both turned, their smiles urging me to hold my ground. Daniel continued, his voice resonant. For 2 decades, Evelyn built a career that set benchmarks in our industry. She led campaigns that didn't just succeed, they transformed companies. I saw it firsthand when I was part of a struggling division years ago. Her leadership didn't just drive profit, it restored belief. And when life handed her a choice between professional prestige and her mother's final months, she chose what mattered most. Not many would have the courage to walk away from millions to sit beside a hospital bed. The room fell utterly silent. Even the waitstaff froze, trays balanced midair. Daniel's words wrapped around me like armor, each syllable dismantling the narrative Monica had been constructing for months. She is not unemployed. She is not fragile. She is not a cautionary tale, he said, his tone sharpening. She is proof that real strength is measured not by titles, but by choices. And that's the kind of leadership every company should aspire to. There it was, the line that shattered everything. A ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd, phones discreetly lifted to capture the moment. Somewhere, I knew, this would go viral before dessert was served. Monica shifted, her glass trembling slightly in her hand. She tried to laugh, but the sound died quickly when no one joined in. Daniel lowered the mic just enough to add, with pointed calm, "And if anyone here ever doubted Evelyn's worth, consider this. I've been trying to recruit her for months. Summit Dynamics would be lucky to have her, but she has higher priorities for now." The applause this time wasn't polite, it was thunderous. Strangers clapped, cousins cheered, and Emily wiped at her eyes, her hand tight around Noah's arm. I swallowed hard, my vision blurring as I forced myself to smile. The praise wasn't just vindication, it was liberation. Daniel handed the mic back to the coordinator and lifted his glass once more. To Noah and Emily. And to Evelyn Carter May, we all remember that true success is knowing what really matters. The crowd echoed his words, glasses raised high. I clinked mine softly against Noah's, my hand trembling. His whisper reached only me. "See, Mom? They finally see you the way I always did." And for the first time in months, I believed it. The roar of applause still echoed when I realized what was happening. All around me, arms lifted into the air. Guests weren't just clapping, they were recording. Phones hovered like glowing lanterns, dozens of them catching my face, Daniel's calm authority, Monica's strained smile. I'd seen that look in boardrooms before. The moment someone realizes the narrative has slipped from their control. For a split second, panic clawed at my chest. I had spent 6 months invisible, deliberately quiet. Now, in the space of a wedding toast, my story was being captured, framed, and broadcast by people I barely knew. "Mom," Noah whispered at my shoulder, his voice equal parts awe and warning. "This is going to blow up." I glanced at him, then at Emily beside him, her mascara smudged with happy tears. The crowd wasn't dispersing. They were leaning closer, murmuring, holding phones higher to make sure they didn't miss a word. Someone near the bar whispered loudly enough to carry, "That's Evelyn Carter. She's the one who ran the Vega campaign 300% ROI, right?" Another voice answered, "Yeah, I thought she disappeared. Didn't know she walked away for her mom." And just like that, the judgment shifted, from failure to sacrifice, from invisibility to recognition. Monica tried to laugh, a brittle sound swallowed by the hum of voices. She raised her glass as though to reclaim attention, but even her closest colleagues had turned their backs, screens tilted toward me. Daniel, still holding his own glass, set it down on a tray and leaned slightly toward me. "You'll want to brace yourself," he said quietly, a trace of dry humor in his tone. "This kind of thing doesn't stay in a ballroom." I managed a smile. I figured as much. Within minutes, snippets of his speech were already being replayed aloud. A guest replayed her video for a friend who had missed the toast, the words, "She is not fragile. She is proof," rippling through the crowd like gospel. I caught sight of one of Emily's bridesmaids typing furiously, her phone angled so I could read the hashtags, #leadership, #strength, #family first. Another guest, a young man in a navy suit, turned to his friend. "This is going viral. Bet it's on LinkedIn before dessert." The ballroom doors opened, but no one moved inside. The reception schedule stalled, the band's warm-up tune fading into awkward silence. Everyone was waiting, watching, phones raised like a forest of eyes. Emily, radiant even with tears streaking her cheeks, slipped her arm through mine. "You deserve this moment," she whispered. "Don't shrink away." Her words pierced the panic tightening my lungs. She was right. For once, I didn't have to apologize for being seen. I lifted my chin. If they were going to film me, I would give them something worth remembering. "Thank you," I said, raising my glass again, my voice clear enough to cut through the noise. It's easy to measure success in titles and paychecks, but tonight reminded me that sometimes success is choosing presence over prestige. My son and his wife will remember this night for the rest of their lives, and so will I, for reasons I never expected. A hush fell. Then applause erupted again, louder than before. The kind that shakes your bones. Even the servers clapped. The band leader wiped his eyes, and in the corner Monica sank into a chair, her phone buzzing furiously with notifications she didn't dare check. The glow of screens followed me as guests pressed closer, eager for handshakes, introductions, words to capture on their feeds. A silver-haired man approached first, his phone still recording. "Ms. Carter, I've been quoting your Vega strategy in my lectures at NYU. To see you honored here, it's extraordinary." Another chimed in. "Would you consider speaking at our leadership summit this fall? The world needs more of this." Their voices blended into a chorus of offers, admiration, and hungry curiosity. My heart pounded, but this time not from fear. It was the adrenaline of standing back in a spotlight I hadn't sought, but suddenly didn't dread. Noah leaned close, his voice low. "Mom, this is bigger than Daniel's speech now. People are already posting. Look." He tilted his screen toward me. Twitter feeds lit up with clips under hashtags I'd never imagined attached to my name. #Evelyn Carter trended within minutes, and beneath it, comments poured in. Finally, a leader who defines success as humanity, not burnout. She left millions to care for her mother. That's real strength. Corporate America, take notes. I pressed a trembling hand against my glass, overwhelmed. Daniel reappeared at my side, his tone even but weighted. "You've just been given a platform, Ms. Carter. What you do with it next will matter." I looked at him, steady now. "I've negotiated bigger campaigns than this. I'll figure it out." He gave the faintest smile. That's what I was counting on. The ballroom finally began to stir, guests funneling inside with their phones still aloft, narrating what they had just witnessed. To them, it wasn't just a wedding reception anymore, it was a moment of revelation. And as the music swelled and Noah guided me toward the head table, I understood. My sister hadn't just tried to humiliate me, she had unwittingly handed me a stage larger than I ever could have built alone. By the time the first dance began, I was no longer just Evelyn Carter, the woman who walked away from her career. I was Evelyn Carter, the story the internet had chosen to tell, and this time, I wasn't invisible at all. Monday morning arrived with a gray drizzle that blurred the skyline over Jersey City. Commuters hurried past Summit Dynamics' glass tower, umbrellas bobbing like restless ants. Inside, the atmosphere was heavier than the weather. Monica Carter stepped out of the elevator on the executive floor, her heels unusually tentative. She had hardly slept. Her phone had buzzed without pause all weekend, friends forwarding links, colleagues sending cryptic texts. The viral clip was everywhere. Daniel Wu praising Evelyn, Evelyn reclaiming her voice, the crowd erupting. And just off to the side of the video, Monica's face, frozen in a brittle smile, had become its own meme. She smoothed her blazer and forced her breath steady. At 8 sharp, she entered Daniel Wu's office. He didn't offer her a seat. "Ms. Carter," he began, his tone clipped, "do you know how many calls I fielded yesterday about our HR leadership?" She clasped her hands. "Mr. Wu, it was a family misunderstanding taken out of context." Daniel cut her off. Context doesn't matter when the world sees you undermining the very values you're paid to uphold. The board is furious, our employees are furious, and He exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. I'm questioning if you've ever understood what this company stands for. Monica's mask cracked. I've given everything to Summit. I was defending us, proving loyalty. Loyalty? Daniel's voice hardened. Loyalty isn't tearing down caregivers to climb a ladder. It isn't branding your own sister as weak in front of employees who now wonder if they're safe taking family leave. The silence that followed was suffocating. Monica's throat worked, but no words came. You'll clear your schedule, Daniel said finally. HR compliance review begins today. Until then, you're suspended with pay. Security will escort you to collect your belongings. Her lips parted, desperate. This isn't fair. Daniel met her eyes without blinking. No, it isn't. But you made it inevitable. She stumbled out of the office, past colleagues whose stares burned hotter than the drizzle outside. For the first time in her career, the glass tower felt less like a symbol of ascent and more like a door narrowing shut. Meanwhile, across the river in Brooklyn, my phone buzzed with a flood of invitations, offers, and messages. I hadn't even had my first cup of coffee when the first headline appeared. From caregiver to corporate icon, Evelyn Carter's viral moment redefines success. And I knew this week was just beginning. The Monday headlines hadn't cooled by Friday. Every morning I woke to the same sight, my phone buzzing with new requests, my inbox stacked higher than the Manhattan skyline I once ruled from. Day one had started innocently enough. 2 speaking invitations, 3 consulting inquiries, and 1 interview request from Forbes. By the end of day 3, the list had doubled, then tripled. Suddenly, I wasn't just Evelyn Carter, the woman who walked away. I was Evelyn Carter, the woman who had redefined leadership in 40 seconds, as one headline put it. But viral fame, I quickly learned, comes with its own KPIs. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, Mom dozing lightly in the next room. My tea had gone cold hours ago. Noah leaned against the counter, scrolling his phone, a grin tugging at his lips. You're trending again, he said. This clip's already at 1 million views on LinkedIn. And hold on, someone just launched a hashtag, #LeadLikeEvelyn. I groaned, rubbing my temples. God help me, I sound like a TED Talk. No, he said, laughing. You sound like someone people are desperate to hear from. By Wednesday, I had a spreadsheet columns of offers, deadlines, names of companies I hadn't thought about in years. I color-coded them like old campaign metrics. Green for promising, yellow for maybe, red for avoid. I caught myself whispering the words I once used to train junior staff. Filter the noise, chase the signal. Still, the weight was real. Caring for Mom meant I could only give a few hours a day to this sudden rebirth, and yet the world seemed determined to demand all of me. That evening, while adjusting Mom's IV, I confessed my worry. What if I can't keep up? Her eyes opened, weak but steady. Then you choose what matters, the way you always have. The rest will fall away. Her words steadied me more than any headline. By Thursday, the calls shifted from flattery to pressure. A CEO I barely remembered leaned into the phone, voice slick. Evelyn, this is your moment. You could scale fast, grab everything while people are looking. Strike now or regret it. I paused before answering. I'm not interested in chasing everything. I'm interested in building something that lasts. The silence on the other end told me he didn't understand, but I did. Friday evening, Noah spread Chinese takeout across the table again, our ritual since the hospital days. Emily joined us, cheeks flushed with excitement. She showed me a post from her bridal party's group chat. Evelyn, she said, your speech has been remixed on TikTok. Teenagers are using your line about negotiating for time with your mother. It's hitting millions of views. I laughed in disbelief, chopsticks hovering. Great, I've become a soundbite. Emily leaned in, her voice softer. You've become proof that walking away doesn't mean giving up. That night, after Mom drifted back to sleep, I stared at the spreadsheet again. For years, my KPIs were revenue growth, ROI, brand lift. Now my metrics looked different. Hours at Mom's bedside, meals shared with Noah, contracts that aligned with values, not just numbers. I drafted my first formal plan for Carter Strategy Group, a name that felt both terrifying and inevitable. At the top of the document, instead of quarterly revenue goals, I wrote one simple line: new KPIs, time, integrity, impact. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was leading again, not just a company, but my own life. By the weekend, there was no escaping it. My face was everywhere: phone screens in coffee shops, news anchors on muted TVs at the pharmacy, even an ad that auto-played while I waited for a YouTube tutorial. The clip had taken on a life of its own. It wasn't just Daniel's praise anymore. Someone had edited it into a 30-second highlight reel. My calm voice saying, "I'm negotiating for the most expensive thing time with my mother," followed by the crowd's eruption of applause. The video ended with Daniel declaring, "She is proof." It had racked up millions of views. I sat on the couch with Mom, the glow of the TV casting shadows over her frail face. Noah flipped through channels until he landed on a morning panel show. "Coming up," the host announced, "the viral wedding toast that has corporate America buzzing." Was Evelyn Carter's sacrifice weakness or a new kind of strength? I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "God, they're turning me into a segment," Noah grinned. "Correction, they're turning you into a symbol." Emily leaned over from the armchair, scrolling her phone. "Look at this. LinkedIn is exploding. People are sharing stories about quitting jobs to care for parents, leaving toxic workplaces, setting boundaries. They're tagging you as inspiration." I reached for her phone. Post after post blurred in front of my eyes. If Evelyn Carter can walk away at the top, maybe I can too. Finally, someone proves family isn't a career killer. Evelyn's 40-second response should be played in every leadership meeting. But there were critics too. Anonymous accounts sneering, "Privileged, not everyone can afford to quit." Others dismissing me as a one-hit wonder. The mix churned in my stomach like acid. "Don't read the comments," Noah said gently, taking the phone back. "You'll drown in them. Focus on the good." Mom reached for my hand, her grip weak but certain. "You spoke truth, Evie. Truth always rattles people. Let it rattle. You keep walking steady." Her words steadied me more than any headline. That evening, my inbox chimed again. A journalist from the Wall Street Journal wanted an op-ed. A nonprofit focused on caregiver rights invited me to keynote, and Daniel had sent a short, almost wry email. "Told you this wouldn't stay in the ballroom. Coffee next week? We need to talk culture strategy." The irony wasn't lost on me. Monica had tried to erase me with whispers. Instead, her words had amplified mine to millions. I stepped out onto the porch, phone buzzing in my pocket, the cool Brooklyn air filling my lungs. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something vast, terrifying, and possible. And I knew this viral moment wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. By Tuesday morning, the wave that had lifted me was crashing squarely on Monica. Summit Dynamics had released a bland corporate statement about reaffirming values of empathy and inclusivity, but everyone knew what it meant. Employees whispered in hallways, group chats buzzed with links to the viral clip, and HR staff her own team avoided eye contact as she walked past. That afternoon, Monica was summoned to the executive boardroom. She smoothed her navy blazer, the same one she wore for interviews when she first landed her director role, as if fabric alone could shield her from what was coming. The long glass table reflected her pale face back at her as she sat across from Daniel Wu and two board members. Daniel's tone was measured, but the air around him was heavy. "Ms. Carter, we've completed our compliance review." Monica clasped her hands tightly. "Mr. Wu, He held up a hand. "We'll speak, but first you'll listen." One of the board members slid a folder across the table. Inside were screenshots, her posts mocking excuses, her laughing emoji under a cousin's comment about Evelyn, transcriptions of remarks at the wedding caught on multiple phones, proof, layered and damning. "Your role," Daniel said evenly, is to safeguard culture. Instead, you undermined it publicly and repeatedly. This isn't about one incident. It's about a pattern that contradicts everything Summit stands for. Monica's voice cracked. It was family. I wasn't speaking as HR. I was speaking as a sister. And yet, the other board member replied, your words were heard by employees, posted online, and now define how people view this company. That line between sister and director doesn't exist once you've blurted in public. She leaned forward, desperation bleeding through. Suspend me. Demote me. Don't end me. 20 years I can fix this. Daniel's eyes softened only slightly, then hardened again. Loyalty matters, yes, but so does accountability. You used your sister as a stepping stone to prove your strength. All you proved is weakness in our leadership. The silence that followed was final. Effective immediately, Daniel continued, your employment is terminated. HR transition begins today. Security will escort you out after you collect your personal items. Monica swallowed, blinking fast, as if sheer will could hold back tears. She gathered her blazer tighter around her, stood on trembling legs, and whispered, you'll regret this. No, Daniel replied quietly. You will. She left the boardroom without another word. Meanwhile, across Brooklyn, I was sitting at Mom's bedside, the glow of my laptop lighting her face as she dozed. An email popped into my inbox from a former Summit employee. Thank you. People are breathing easier knowing she's gone. Please keep doing what you're doing. I stared at the message, emotions tangled. Monica was my sister. Her downfall wasn't something I had sought, and yet it was the consequence she had carved with her own hands. Noah walked in with 2 coffees, setting one by my elbow. It's official, he said softly. She's out. HR chat's blowing up. I nodded, sipping slowly. Bitterness and relief swirled together, heavy on my tongue. Mom stirred, her frail voice cutting through the quiet. What's wrong, Evie? I leaned down, kissing her forehead. Nothing's wrong, Mom. For once, the truth won. Outside, rain streaked the window. Inside, a verdict had been delivered, not just against Monica, but against the culture that had long confused cruelty with strength. And for the first time, I felt the door opening wider, not for her, but for me. The following Thursday morning, I walked into a sunlit conference room in Lower Manhattan, not as a guest, not as a whisper of who I used to be, but as a partner. The polished oak table gleamed, the city skyline stretched wide behind glass, and at the head of the table sat Daniel Wu. Across from him were 2 executives from a Fortune 500 firm I had admired for years. Their folders were stacked neatly, their eyes sharp but curious. I set my leather notebook down, steadying my breath. A week ago, I was still juggling hospital visits, spreadsheets of offers, and the noise of public opinion. Today, it came to this, my first official contract under Carter Strategy Group. Daniel opened with practiced ease. We've reviewed your proposal. What stood out wasn't just the metrics, it was the philosophy. You're not selling services. You're anchoring them in values. One of the executives, a woman in her 50s with a crisp navy suit, leaned forward. Frankly, we've been burned before by agencies promising impact, but your pitch family leave as a driver of loyalty, empathy as ROI, that's different. Bold. I smiled, calm but resolute. Bold, yes, but also measurable. If you want quarterly KPIs, I'll give you retention rates, brand trust scores, and employee wellness data. Because culture isn't a soft metric, it's the bottom line. The room was silent for a beat. Then she nodded slowly, almost smiling. Let's sign. A contract slid across the table. I uncapped my pen, my hand trembling only slightly, not from fear but from the weight of choice. I could almost hear Mom's voice in my head. You choose what matters. I signed my name, Evelyn Carter, and beneath it wrote the name of my firm. Carter Strategy Group. The ink bled into the paper, permanent. Applause broke around the table, polite but warm. Daniel extended his hand. Congratulations, Evelyn. You've just secured your first multi-million-dollar account. I shook his hand, firm. Not because I chased it, I said, but because I stood for it. Later that evening, I returned to Brooklyn with takeout bags dangling from my arm. Mom was propped up in her chair, the glow of the setting sun spilling across her silver hair. Noah and Emily were curled together on the couch, whispering about weekend plans. I set the folder with the signed contract on the table next to Mom's tea. "It's official," I told them. "We're in business." Noah whooped, Emily hugged me, and Mom reached for my hand, squeezing with a strength I hadn't felt from her in months. "You didn't just win back your career," she whispered. "You built it on your terms." Tears pricked my eyes as I leaned down to kiss her forehead. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was catching up to life. I felt like I was leading it again. Looking back, I realized the past year was never about losing my career or fighting to regain status. It was about learning that worth isn't measured in titles, salaries, or the corner office. It's measured in how you choose when life gives you impossible trade-offs. I chose my mother, and that choice, once seen as weakness, became the foundation for strength I didn't know I had. What I've learned is this: values are not a liability. They are leverage. Walking away didn't break me, it rebuilt me. And while my sister tried to define me as fragile, the truth is that standing for family, integrity, and compassion gave me more resilience than any promotion ever could. If you're listening to this and wondering if you have the courage to choose differently, to value what truly matters, trust me, you do. Your story won't look exactly like mine, but the principle holds. Success built on values will always outlast success built on fear. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If this story resonated with you, please hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs the reminder. And tell me in the comments, what values do you refuse to compromise?